Okay. So, everyone always says it, but this time I really think this is big. Um, Google's just released their latest AI model, Gemini 2.5 Pro Experimental, they're calling it.
Hmm.
And I've been using it. It feels different than like all the other hype.
I think you're right. Yeah, it feels like there's something genuinely new here, especially when you look at what it can do with things that AI has really struggled with in the past.
Yeah, and what's really cool for you is this isn't some research project that's locked away. Like you can actually go use it right now in Google's AI Studio. And the crazy part is it's free to use right now, and it is so fast. It's like instant.
Wow.
Like it's crazy. Its knowledge cutoff is January 2025, so it's really up to date. And the context window is like 1 million tokens, which is mind blowing. I mean,
Yeah.
to give you a sense of scale, that's like feeding it like multiple novels at the same time.
Yeah, that's a lot of information. Yeah. I mean, that could be a total game changer. To be able to analyze that much information at once, like you could give it a huge scientific data set, like a research paper or legal documents. You could give it an entire, epic fantasy series, and it could understand it all at the same time.
And the architecture is really interesting. They're calling it a thinking model,
Yeah.
which is basically what they're saying is it's like it thinks in multiple steps, almost like a human. So it can actually reason through problems instead of just seeing patterns.
Yeah. It's kind of like emulating how our brains work, right?
Right.
Okay.
And this like multi-stage process means it's much better at, things that require more than just pattern matching. So it can actually like write code,
Yeah.
solve logic puzzles. It can actually do math problems
Yeah.
and reasoning tasks that, we can actually check the answer to see if they're right or wrong.
Right. So it's not just about finding patterns, it's about actually understanding and processing the information to get to the right answer.
Exactly. Now, the demos are pretty amazing. Some of the stuff this thing can do is like, puts other leading models like to shame. Like
Yeah.
it's really impressive.
Yeah, I've seen some of the early reports. It's natural to be a little skeptical at first. Like, are these just, cherry-picked examples, or is this really, a big leap forward?
Right.
But the benchmark results that I've seen are actually pretty compelling. So
Yeah. Okay, well, let's start with one that was really interesting. The Rubik's Cube. Now, you might think, big deal, AI can do a Rubik's Cube. But this isn't just like a simple simulation. It's a full 3D rendered Rubik's Cube that you can ask it to generate
Yeah.
in any size you can think of. So like you can do a 3x3, which is a classic one.
Right.
You can do a 4x4, which gets a lot more difficult.
yeah, a lot more combinations.
And then you can go all the way up to a 10x10, which is just like mind-boggling.
That's a lot of squares.
Right. And what's really amazing is like as it scrambles the cube, it maintains the color of each individual square. You can rotate it, you can look at it from any angle.
Yeah, a lot of the other models I've seen really struggle with that. Like the colors get messed up, the orientation of the squares gets confused. But this one seems to keep track of everything perfectly.
Exactly. And here's the crazy part. It doesn't just generate a scrambled cube. It can actually solve it in real time, right in front of you.
Mhm.
So I watched it solve a 4x4 cube in like, I don't know, maybe a second. It was so fast. And even a 10x10 cube, which is just like
Great.
crazy. It actually worked its way back to a solved state.
Wow. And how long did that take?
It took a little bit longer, obviously.
Yeah.
But it was still pretty incredible to watch. And the best part is you can actually interact with the cube yourself. Like if you want to try and solve it manually, you can grab it and rotate it with your mouse. It's like an interactive puzzle solver.
So it's not just watching the AI work. You can actually get involved yourself. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. And the benchmarks really reflect this capability. So Gemini 2.5 Pro Experimental went straight to the top of the Ellen Marina leaderboard.
Oh, wow. So it's not just, performing well in isolated tests. It's actually being recognized as superior by real users.
Exactly. And for those who don't know, Ellen Marina is really fascinating. Basically what it is, it's a platform where you have humans, right? They're anonymous, but they're real people, and they're comparing different AI models side by side. And they're actually voting on which responses they think are better.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's a much more subjective, human-centered evaluation.
Exactly. And Gemini 2.5 Pro achieved an ELO score of 1443, which is significantly higher than the previous COP model, which was Growth 3 Preview, which scored 1404.
That's a pretty big difference in ELO, though, actually.
It is. It's a substantial margin and really shows that, people are recognizing that there's something special about this model.
Right. It's not just about passing technical tests. It's about actually producing outputs that humans find valuable and engaging.
Yeah, exactly. And then when we look at the more traditional objective benchmarks,
Right.
the picture is still really strong. So across a whole range of evaluations, Gemini 2.5 Pro was either leading the pack or very near the top.
Hmm.
And it was up against some really strong contenders like GPT 4.5, they're calling it. Sometimes it's referred to as O3 Mini, Claude 3.7 Sonic, Grow 3 Beta, DeepSeek R1,
Yeah.
all the big players.
So it's not just beating, some obscure models. It's competing with the best of the best.
Right. And so, for example, it absolutely aced humanity's last exam with no tools, which is a benchmark that's designed to test its broad general knowledge across a ton of different subjects. It also completely dominated GPTQA Diamond, which is a benchmark that focuses on answering complex science questions.
Yeah.
And it very, very narrowly beat the competition in Amy 2025, which is a really tough benchmark. And it also scored significantly higher than O3 Mini on the earlier Amy 2024 benchmark. Now, it did score lower on Life Code Bench than some of the others, which is interesting.
Yeah, what do you think that means?
Well, it might mean that its coding abilities are more specialized. Maybe it's better at complex code generation or understanding, complex code bases rather than that real-time interactive coding.
That makes sense. So it might be more of a strategic coder than a quick-on-the-draw coder.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But then it showed this incredible performance, really dominated, in the Aider Polyglot coding benchmark. And in MMU, which is another really important benchmark that tests, its understanding across a whole range of academic subjects, it came out on top again.
So it's not just good at one specific type of coding. It seems to have a broad understanding of different programming languages and concepts.
Yeah. And then in the MRCR benchmark, which is the one that specifically tests how well it can handle really long pieces of text, remember that million token context window?
Right. Right.
It scored incredibly, incredibly well.
So it's not just, that it can technically handle that much information. It's actually able to understand and make sense of it.
Yeah. And Google themselves, they've been talking a lot about how they focused on improving the coding performance. They're saying they achieved a big leap with Gemini 2.5 Pro over the 2.0 version. And, they're hinting at even more improvements in this area to come. And they were really talking about how it has the potential to build visually really rich web applications and, those code-based agents that can act autonomously.
Yeah, those are getting more and more sophisticated these days.
Yeah, yeah. Sweetbench Verified, which is a really well-respected industry benchmark for evaluating how well these AI agents can actually handle coding tasks in the real world. Gemini 2.5 Pro got a score of 63.8% when it was set up with a custom agent.
Wow, that's actually really impressive. That suggests it's not just about generating, little snippets of code. It can actually function as a real coding partner.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's go back to the demos for a minute, because this is where things get really cool. So, one demo that was super impressive was the interactive Lego building simulation. And so the prompt was to create this using the 3JS JavaScript library, all within a single self-contained HTML file. So the user asked for the ability to place, move, and connect 3D Lego bricks with, realistic visual fidelity, a grid system so they would snap together, accurate collision detection so they wouldn't overlap, and even visual and audio feedback whenever actions were performed.
That's a pretty demanding prompt. It's not just asking for basic shapes, it's asking for a really interactive and visually realistic experience.
Yeah, and amazingly, it worked. So the demo showed all these different sized and colored Lego bricks appearing on the screen. And when you would drag them around, they would snap to this invisible grid.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was neat. And if you tried to place a brick in a spot where it wasn't allowed, it would turn transparent red.
Ah, so you get immediate feedback that something's wrong.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the collision detection working. And you could easily click and drag bricks around to reposition them, rotate them in 3D. You can move the camera around. It was really cool. The only weird thing visually was sometimes the studs on top of the Legos would be missing.
Ah, so just a little visual glitch.
Yeah. But other than that, it was amazing. And the thing that really made this demo stand out was they compared it to a similar attempt using Deep's V3.
Oh, interesting.
And Deep's really struggled. It made these weird bricks that had these cylindrical shapes on top. They couldn't be stacked properly. And the collision detection was just non-existent. So it was really night and day between the two.
Wow. So it sounds like Gemini 2.5 Pro has a much better grasp of spatial relationships in 3D environments.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's move on to another really cool demo, the classic snake game. But this was not your typical retro snake. This was the prompt asked for a version built using Python Pygame, but with a whole bunch of like really cool and unique enhancements, like stuff to make it much more visually appealing and engaging. So we're talking like dynamic visual effects, like a glowing, fading trail that the snake leaves behind, a background that kind of like pulses with these shifting colors and these cool particle explosions whenever the snake eats food.
So it's not just about the gameplay, it's about creating a really visually immersive experience.
Yeah, exactly. And it delivered on all of that. So there were different types of food that would give the snake temporary power-ups. So you could get a speed boost.
Right.
You could get reverse controls, which like messed with your brain.
Oh, I bet.
There was a double vision effect.
Oh, wow.
And there was even a time slowdown where everything was slowed down for a little bit.
What?
And each power-up had its own little animation, so it was visually very distinct.
That's really creative.
And the snake itself would change as it grew longer. So like it would start to look more biomechanical, or it would cycle through different colors. And then to make things even more challenging, they had procedurally generated animated obstacles appearing on the screen.
Oh, wow. So it's like a constantly evolving challenge.
Yeah, yeah. And they even had different terrain zones that would affect how fast the snake could move because of the different friction. And get this, they even added an AI-controlled snake opponent.
Wow. So you're not just playing against the game itself, you're playing against another intelligence.
Right, right. And they showed all of this working together in the demo, like the power-ups, the AI snake moving around. It was really impressive. It was a far cry from that, like, simple pixelated game we all remember.
Yeah, it sounds like a whole new level of Snake.
Definitely. And then they did this interesting thing where they asked for a simple flight sim. And the prompt was so simple, it was just, create me a flight sim. No other details, nothing. Yeah. And even with that incredibly basic instruction, Gemini 2.5 Pro managed to create a functional, very basic flight simulator. So you could control the acceleration, you could move in all 3 dimensions.
Oh, wow.
There was even a shadow under the plane that like shimmered a little bit.
Yeah.
And they had like fog effects to create a sense of depth. You couldn't go off the map and the plane could slow down a lot.
Yeah.
But for such a simple open-ended prompt, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's like it understood the basic concept of a flight simulator and just ran with it.
Yeah, yeah. And then they wanted to see how creative it could be. So they asked it to make another snake game. But this time they turned up the temperature setting all the way up to 1.
And what does that do?
So the temperature setting basically controls how random and creative the output is.
Oh, interesting.
So the higher the temperature, the more likely it is to do something unexpected. And the result was really interesting. It generated a completely different snake game. And it did it super fast. This version had like green pulsating food, a different visual style for the snake's trail, and it's apparently much harder to play. And it seemed to have different rules than the other snake game, and it even had this weird little blue thing in it.
Oh, that's strange.
Yeah, it was very bizarre, and it crashed pretty quickly, but it was a cool example of how just changing one setting can lead to really different and creative results.
Yeah, it's like you're giving it more freedom to explore different possibilities.
Exactly. And then they had to try to recreate the Reddit website in a single file. And they had to do a Google search beforehand, which was interesting. I think they were trying to give it an idea of what the current Reddit interface looks like, although it's not clear how much it actually used that information.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And the resulting website wasn't an exact replica of the modern Reddit. It looked more like an older version, but it did have like posts, comments, and you could even join different subs.
So it captured the basic functionality and structure of Reddit.
Yeah, for such a simple prompt, it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's not just copying code, it's understanding the concepts behind a website like Reddit.
Right. Okay, then we get to some of the more visually stunning demos. So they had to create an interactive 3D torus knot simulation.
A torus knot.
Yeah, it's this really cool mathematical shape. And they wanted this simulation built using Three.js in a single HTML file. And the prompt for this one was really detailed. They specified the geometry of the knot, the materials used for rendering, the lighting, and they asked for these interactive GUI sliders that would let you control all these different parameters in real time.
So it's like a 3D modeling tool, but generated entirely by the AI.
Yeah, pretty much. And it worked amazingly well. So with these sliders, you could change the radius of the torus, the thickness of the tube, the number of segments, the winding numbers, which control the shape of the knot. You could rotate it, change the color, make it wireframe, adjust the shininess, the opacity. You could even change the lighting, and it was all in real time. So you could just play with these sliders and watch the knot change shape. It was mesmerizing.
Wow, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah, it was. And then they had it create an interactive ant farm simulation. Again, built with Three.js in a single HTML file. and they wanted it to mimic the classic ant farm toy. So
Yeah.
they asked for a transparent side view in 3D with animated ants digging tunnels, carrying food, interacting with each other, all inside these transparent plastic walls. And they even asked for some subtle effects to make it look more realistic.
So it's like a virtual ant farm.
Exactly. And the first version was really cool, but it didn't have any user control, so they just asked it to add some adjustable parameters.
Yeah.
And it did. So the updated version let you change the number of ants, their digging speed, the rate at which food appeared, the time of day. You could even switch between sand and gel for the substrate.
So it's like you're controlling the environment of the ant farm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were even talking about adding things like ant breeding and death cycles, which would be really cool.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
And then there's this simulation of a virus attacking cells in a bloodstream. Yeah. So they asked for a visual representation of like blood flowing, red blood cells, white blood cells, different viruses. And they wanted sliders to control different aspects of the simulation. So they started with a 2D version. It showed the red blood cells moving around, the white blood cells patrolling different types of viruses. And you could adjust how many viruses there were, how fast they replicated. You could control the white blood cells, how fast they moved, how far they could detect the viruses. You could even control the speed of the blood flow and the simulation itself.
So it's like a simplified model of the immune system?
Yeah, sort of. And then they asked for a 3D version, and it made one. So you could zoom in and out, move the camera around, and all the controls still worked.
That's impressive.
Yeah. And the demo showed like these aggressive viruses attacking the red blood cells and the white blood cells trying to fight them off. And they even added this cool turbulence effect to the blood flow. It was a really neat simulation of this like microscopic biological process.
Yeah, it sounds really visually engaging.
It was. And finally, they asked for a toy surgery simulator just for fun.
Oh, interesting.
And it came up with this basic but functional surgery simulator. You could use a virtual scalpel to make incisions and then suture up the cuts. And it even had scores for precision and stability. So if you made really messy cuts, your stability would go down. But if you sutured it up properly, it would stabilize again.
So it's a very simplified model of surgery, but it captures the basic idea.
Yeah. And it's just incredible that it created this whole simulator from such a simple prompt.
It is.
So, what are the big takeaways here?
Well, it's clear that Gemini 2.5 Pro Experimental is a huge step forward for AI, especially when it comes to coding. It's not just beating benchmarks, it's creating these amazing interactive experiences from very simple instructions. Like, think about it. It can solve Rubik's Cube, build a Lego simulator, create a complex snake game, even generate a basic version of Reddit.
Yeah. And then there's that Taurus knot, the ant farm, the virus simulation, the surgery game. It's just mind-blowing.
It really is. And what's so exciting is the potential this has for rapid prototyping. Imagine being able to just describe an idea for an app or a game and have a working version in minutes. That could revolutionize how we develop software and digital experiences.
Yeah, and it could lead to completely new types of interactive content that we haven't even imagined yet.
And it raises some really interesting questions about how AI will integrate into our creative processes. Will it be a powerful tool that helps us be more productive, or will it fundamentally change how we think about creating things?
That's a great question, and that's something I want you to think about. Which of these demonstrations stood out to you the most, and what kind of impact could this technology have on your work or your interests? It's a really exciting time to be following this field.